Okay, so welcome you guys to Built to Exit, how to redesign your business so it can run itself. So what I thought I'd say is, first of all, unlike a lot of other productivity workshops you might be going on, this webinar is not about doing more with the time you as a boss or as a leader have. This workshop is about your business getting bigger and better results with all the time it has and giving you more freedom to do what you want with that time. That freedom could be spent on maybe designing that new product that you've always thought you should be getting on with. Or it could be, to be honest, it could be spending more time on the golf course or doing whatever it is you love. But basically, it's about, I guess, designing a business that helps you get your life back, because you're probably working all sorts of hours. And at the same time, building it so that you maximize the value for when you want to exit your business. Now, all you guys are on the Accelerated Growth Program, which is absolutely fantastic, and thanks for that. And hopefully we're delivering a great job for you. But a lot of people believe the only reason you would go on a growth program, the only reason you would grow a business is to exit it. And that could be a partial exit where you only work a couple of days a week if you're the owner, or it could be the full exit, in which case you hand it on to maybe the people in your team or to a supplier, or maybe even to a competitor. But growth programs, and in general, don't like to talk about it, but kind of the exit is really important. And it may be for some of you that are owners on the call today. What we want to do is redesign your business so it can run itself. Okay, 4 things we'll get from today. First of all, what you need to focus your efforts on to build more value into the business, so it's more valuable, so you can walk away wealthy, as we say. Second thing, pinpoint your business's most important function and focus on that one function. It's most crucial. Third thing, how to help and make your employees act like owners and free yourself from that micromanaging so you can get on with what you love to do, which bit of the business you love to do. How to help people overcome their learned helplessness by developing them into process improvement gurus. Well, we might not get that for everybody, but that's the aim, that people are less helpless. They use their initiative, they're trained, and they can solve their own problems. Okay, let's start. Step 1, shift your mindset from workaholic entrepreneur to savvy shareholder. So the first thing I want you to think about, if you are thinking about trying to build a business, getting ready for exit, the first thing is, I know how busy you are at the moment. It's usually the first thing people say to me, Steve, at the moment, you don't realize how busy I am. I'm really, really busy. I'm super busy. I'm putting in all-nighters. I'm doing working 16, 20 hours a day. It's mad, crazy. But that's what being an entrepreneur is about, isn't it? Well, yes, unfortunately, it probably is for many people. But I want you to shift that mindset from being a workaholic entrepreneur, which I don't think is very healthy for anybody, into more of a savvy shareholder. So whereas a workaholic entrepreneur, yes, works all the hours God sends and burns themselves out, and it's all about being an entrepreneur, I want you to shift that mindset to a shareholder mindset. A shareholder that sits above the organization, directs what needs to happen, helps out and supports where necessary, but in essence, takes those more strategic decisions, works on the business, not in the business, and shares in the profits of that. So, shifting our mindset. This came to me, I suppose, a few years ago when I was delivering an event, and somebody came up to me, just as we were at the lunchtime slot, and said, whilst you're having your sandwich, can you value my business? It's a very odd request to a certain extent, I have to say. But I said, well, it's quite a difficult thing to value someone's businesses, and, you know, in a very short space, it takes a bit of effort. And I said, you know, I'm not sure I can do that. And he said, oh, go on, you know, please, come on, just give me your best guess. So I put down my cheese butty and I said, okay, then let me find out then. Let me ask you a few questions. So he said, okay. I said, what sort of business is it? He said, it's a PR agency business. I said, okay, that's fine. What sort of turnover is it? And he said, oh, about 8 million. So I said, okay. what sort of profit are you making at the moment? And he said, well, not much really. It's pretty much just only washing its face. Okay. So I said, what do you want to do? What sort of an exit do you want? And he said, well, basically, I want to leave the business. I've had enough of those morons that work for me. I'm working every hour God sends, and that's going to affect my life. It's going to affect my health. I've got to get out. So I want to get out, and I want to move to Spain to play golf. So I said, okay, so it's a full exit. Yes, it is. Okay, fair enough. So I said, who does, tell me this, who does the sort of the value adding work in the agency then? And he said, well, I do a bit of it. And he said, but I've got some younger members of staff who do some of the basic stuff. Okay. I said, who does the business development with the big clients, the big contracts? Who wins those? And he said, well, I do, because it's my business. I said, yeah, okay, fair enough. Okay. So I said, I think I'm getting a number in my mind. And he said, really? And he goes, I hope it's a bloody big wedge. And I said, kind of. And he said, what's your number you got in mind? I said, well, to be honest, from what you've just said, the value I would put on your business if you exited in the way that you've done and given the role that you're currently playing is almost, and I paused and then said, 0. And, you know, he stared at me as if with quite a lot of, I think, hatred would be the right word. I said, what on earth are you talking about? It must be worth at least $1 million or 2 million. And I said, well, what's the value of the contracts you've got at the moment? And he said, well, I don't know, about 150K, 200K. And I said, okay, well, go with that amount then. I said, that's the best I can do in my lunch hour. And he said, why, just a minute, why are you saying it's only worth that much? And I said, well, because listen, you do all the work. You're the go-to person. You do all the work in that business. You win all the work in that business. You are the business. The business will only work probably when you're there. And what you're proposing is you're not going to be there at all. And you're going to leave it to a couple of younger people. That's my understanding. I said, if you want a wedge, if you want £1 million, you can build that value in, but it will take you a year, maybe 2 years, but it'd be worth it rather than doing a fire sale at the moment. So that was kind of like an interesting sort of, I guess, conversation, shall I say. But what I think about is actually, if you're on this call now and you're looking to exit, is just think about, to what extent is the business reliant on you? And if you exit, what goes with you? I think about it in terms of maybe just a quick question really. Due to a medical emergency, you have to take the next 4 weeks out of your business. So what areas of your business do you think would still work okay without you for the next 4 weeks? Which bits of the business do you think would be okay? Maybe all of it would, maybe none of it would. And why is that? And then I'd like to think, in what situations would there be big problems? Which bits of the business would you say, oh my goodness me, if that comes in, then there's going to be a massive problem because no one else can do that. Or I know that bit of the machinery is always breaking down. There's only me that can mend it. Or if Sandra in accounts kicks off about X, Y, and Z, then that's a real problem for us. And oh yeah, that's going to be a real. Think about how reliant the business is on you, and what situations and why. Why is it reliant on you? Because if we're going to sell the business, if we're going to exit the business, if you want the business to run like clockwork, then probably the words that you're thinking about or the reasons why it doesn't work like clockwork if you took 4 weeks out is because it's lacking predictability. If we want predictable outputs, as in it runs on its own, it runs like clockwork, it runs brilliantly when you're not there, we need a layer of predictability. Predictability in terms of the outputs, what the job looks like, the products that you produce, the service you deliver. That's got to be very predictable. So no defects and things like that. In order to get those predictable outputs, then clearly we need predictable inputs and predictable process. we reduce the variance. That's how you get predictability, is you need to take action to do fewer things for customers and narrow the narrowest set of expectations. If you think about a business that runs really well, often they're quite simple businesses. Often they do maybe just one or two things. Flip that on its head. Those businesses that don't run well have all sorts of customers coming to them, asking for all sorts of variable products, services, technical, non-technical, etc. The same with variability. What we want to do with variability is reduce it. And if we're going to reduce variability, then particularly with the process side of things, we need to standardize operations, the roles that people play and the outcomes to minimize our problems. So to get your business to run like clockwork when you're not there, or even when you are there, just so that you can, it frees you up rather than you working every hour that God sends. So let's just look at the first one of those, which is actually predictability. Do fewer things for customers with narrow set. But the first thing I want you to do is to think about the multiplier. So when we talk about exit, those of you may be very familiar with this, but the biggest mistake that most owners think about when they're looking to exit is, oh, right, I need to exit, therefore I need to go out and win lots more business, and I need to be much more profitable, and then I can increase the value of my business, which to a certain extent is true. However, and it is a however, what I always urge owners that I work with to do is, yes, clearly you need to maximize the profits on each job, but some or most of your time as an owner, I think, should be spent on attacking and developing the multiple. So for many of you, you'll know this, but usually when you value a company, you usually the most common way, there are lots of different ways, but the most common way in my experience is take the profit of the business and times it by a multiple. And that multiple is typically, you know, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever it might be, but it's kind of the multiple of what that business is worth. And it usually is relatively in line with industry standards. So for a particular type of business, you might get a multiple of 4. For another type of business with a lot more effort, you might get 8, 9, etc. Ultimately, I guess we all know that a bit like a house, you know, a business is only worth what someone's prepared to pay for it, really. So, but if you're thinking about trying to maximize your company value, yes, think about profit, but don't spend all your time trying to win more business. You need to work on the multiple, get someone else to work on the building the business development side. So I'd like to think about the phrase working on the business, not in the business. I want you on this call to stop doing so much and do more designing and do more delegating. So when we're working on the business, not in the business, what sort of, it's a nice phrase, but what does that actually mean? Well, for me, it means working across 9 areas of your business, 9 areas where you're going to build value into that business and boost your multiplier. So what are those 9 areas? Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take you through those quickly through those 9 areas. And I want to give yourself, I want yourself to give yourself a score across each of these 9. So I'll give you the title and then give ourselves a score. Or maybe just in your own head, think about the one that you are weakest on as a business, because that's where we're going to focus. First of all, first thing I would think about if I was looking at building value into your business, first of all, is the owner's mindset. If we're talking about exit, are they emotionally ready? And maybe even is the business technically prepared for exit? If the owner isn't really ready, doesn't want to go yet, or maybe they're desperate to go, but the business isn't prepared yet, it isn't ready to be sold, it's in a bit of a state, there's no financial accounts and the board meetings are a bit rubbish and all the rest of it, just give yourself a score, 0 to 10 on owner's mindset. Where's your owner mindset at the moment? 0 to 10. Second one, financial performance. So here, trying to keep it relatively simple, your revenue and profitability performance. And also, have you got record keeping that shows that you're doing that measuring in a professional way? But let's just stick with, make it easy for ourselves, profitability performance. Between 0 and 10, how are you performing? How's your business performing? Profitability. Is it very, very busy, but not actually that profitable? Growth, potential. What's the likelihood of you growing the business and at what rate? So between 0 and 10, where 0 is you've got no chance of growing the business at all. In fact, probably going the opposite direction. Through to 10, lots of potential and a good high growth rates that a potential purchaser might be interested in. So 0 to 10 on that one. Over-reliance is number 4. So how dependent your business is on any one employee, or that might include you, any customer, or any supplier. So if I was thinking about buying your business, you know, too often, many businesses actually maybe 80%, sometimes 85% of their profit is made up by just one customer. Or sometimes there's one genius person in the business. And if that person left, the business would be in trouble. Or maybe sometimes even one supplier. What about you? 0, not dependent on anybody? Or 10, really high dependency, maybe on an employee and a customer? Cash generation, number 5. To what degree the business gets cash in late or upfront in the process? So investors and people buying businesses like to see a business that's cash generative. So if you think about what would be a good example? Oh, a magazine subscription. Magazine subscriptions are great for magazines and publishers because you pay for the next 12 months of monthly subscription, etc. You pay up front. That actually helps them cash the whole publication for the next 12 months. Whereas in some cases, say, for example, some of the assignments I do that are results orientated, I only get paid when the business delivers on the growth or creates the jobs. That's very non-cash generative. So 0 to 10 for yourself. Maybe it's a 5 for you, but 0 being actually all the cash comes in very late, or 10, all the cash is up front. Owner dependent, we've kind of already done this one already, but how would your business be expected to perform if you were unable to work, let's say 3 months? Owner dependent on you. 0, that it wouldn't perform at all, it would collapse. Or 10, it would be performing pretty well, very well, in fact, over the next 3 months. Maybe, some might say, even better without you. I wouldn't. Number 7, differentiated proposition. So here we're talking about how differentiated is your business from its competitors. Honestly, there's lots of Me Too businesses out there. And obviously, if you're on the Accelerated Growth Program, I'm guessing you must have some level of differentiation. But is it really strong? And is that strength of differentiation, is it in the short term or medium term or long term? You know, is it a license that you've got that you've only got for the next few weeks and then you're back in with everybody else? How differentiated is your business? And think about that from 0 if you're same as everybody else, or 10 if you're completely different, or 5 if you're somewhere in the middle. 8, quality of team. How good at execution is your senior management team? So if you were not there, have they got a good track record of delivering on the strategy? Some people talk about the fact that they'd much rather invest in a C-grade idea, but with an A-grade team involved, than an A-grade idea with a C-grade management team involved. How would you rate your team? 0, not particularly well developed. 10, a track record of excellence in execution. 9, customer satisfaction. Likelihood that your customers will rebuy and refer you to other customers. I don't know whether you measure customer satisfaction or the fact that your customers keep coming back is your measure, but how would you rate yourself? 0, very, very poor levels of customer satisfaction, or 10, excellent levels of customer satisfaction. They're champions for you. They refer you to lots of people, or 5, somewhere in the middle, or 1 or 2 or 3, or 7, 8 or 9, depending on where you think you fit on that scale. So I recognize we've done that very, very quickly. And obviously, if I was working with you one-to-one, we'd take a lot more time over this. But I thought it's important just to add value for you in terms of just to give you an idea of the sorts of elements, the sorts of issues that a potential person valuing your business would look at across your business. And what I wanted to do was just to get you to focus, maybe just to realize which one of those is the worst performing. And that if you are looking for a place to focus, that working on the business, not in the business, that's your place of focus. That's where you need to support the business. Because if it's tanking in the sort of red area, then that's going to affect the multiplier quite a lot. If we can get these towards amber or mostly in green, then you're going to dramatically increase your multiplier. So just a quick little exercise on that. Second step, we talked about predictability and variance in maximizing our value of the business, but also in maximizing the time that you can have to free up by getting other people to run the business more effectively. Second step is don't generalize, specialize in a customer type or a product or service. I'll just very, very quickly sort of flash some slides up here, some examples. We haven't got a lot of time to go through these slides, but you guys are bright and sparky enough to get the idea of where I'm coming from, I'm guessing. So if you took a table like this and we rated our customers on the left-hand side column by the turnover that they bring in, not necessarily what they say about us, but their turnover, how much they spend with us. We list top 20, top 30, top 50, whatever customers down the left-hand side. We put in their annual profit revenue. We review their profitability. And then I've got something called here, crush, crunch, or cringe. So is this actually a customer that we've got a crush on? We love them to bits. The work they give us, we can do, we do it well, it's profitable for us and we enjoy it. We've got a crush on them. Or is it cringe? Those jobs that come in where you go, oh no, it's that customer. They always want one of these things to do, maybe more technical, maybe more difficult. It's a real challenge to get it done. Or maybe they don't pay very often, or maybe they're a pain to deal with, or whatever it might be. Do you cringe when you hear that customer? And then I've got crunge in the middle, kind of I guess a fusion of both words. Maybe they're not a crush, but also you don't cringe. So they're sort of at a crunge, I'm guessing. Industry sector or community. What is the industry sector that customer is in? And if you're B2C, maybe community, we'll use that word. And then finally, congregation points. Where do these customers hang out, online or offline? Do they have a particular blog that they go to? Is there a particular conference they go to where if you went there, you could meet more of that sort of customer? So congregation points, a place where you can actually, rather than just meeting the odd 1 or 2, you can actually meet 30, 20, maybe if you're presenting at a conference, 100. So you can see here, very, very simple stuff, but this particular business, customers down the left-hand side, number 1 customer, the revenue was 125K. They were highly profitable. They had a crush on them, so they loved working with them. And they were in the automotive components sector. Key congregation points, these automotive component organizations, they had regular quarterly sector cluster meetings. So if you could get along to one of those, that'd be great. You might be able to meet some more automotive component manufacturers and have a crush on them. There's also a few LinkedIn groups that were really important. Second customer was also, interestingly, aerospace components. Slightly, wasn't quite as much of a crush, it was more a crunch, shall we say. But interestingly, sorry, the first one was automotive components, wasn't it? Yeah. Second one was aerospace components. So that's why there's slight difference. There's slight different technicalities of working with an aerospace component manufacturer versus an automotive. So the top customer is automotive, sector customer meetings, LinkedIn groups. Second one was a crunch, and that was aerospace. And you can see here that they only made medium profitability on that. But if we wanted to meet more aerospace people, there's a portal and there's a cluster meetings as well. And you can see the same here. And the third customer, interestingly, is a third biggest customer, 51K, is low profitability and is a cringe. They don't really like working with it. They don't like the idea of working with this business because the customer demands a lot more in the space industry. Technically, it's a lot more technical spec. They're difficult to work with. They're not that nice. They don't pay very much. So it's a cringe. And they hang out at trade associations, space exhibition meetings and blogs and various other things. So you can see here that on this little chart here, and this is just an example of 4 or 5 customers. This business here loves working with automotive component manufacturers. They make the most profitability from automotive component manufacturers. They love working with automotive manufacturers. They've got a crush on them and they know where they hang out. So if I'm looking to maybe exit this business and I want a more specialist offering where a potential buyer or a supplier, let's say in the automotive component business or even a competitor, they can pigeonhole me rather well there. But maybe I need to dominate that market. Maybe I need to go to more of those key congregation points like the sector cluster meetings and get more of these customers and even think about sacking or getting rid of, in a very nice way, the space industry ones. We can do the same, focusing, specializing, reducing variability, increasing predictability also with our products or services. So if you think about having a product or a service or the way we operate the business, we can think about it in terms of how valuable that offering is to the customers, minus and plus along the horizontal. Or we can also think about it in terms of how teachable that is to your employees. As I said, if you're the genius person in your business, that's really great. We all love being the genius person in our business. It's great for our egos, let's be honest. But the key thing is that it ain't going to grow. You're not going to be able to scale a genius-based business, particularly if it's a people-based, genius-based business. So what we've got to do is think about the products and services we're going to focus in on that not only are valuable to customers, but also that are teachable, that you can set it out in a process so someone else can learn how to do what you do or learn how to do this particular thing. And then we can think about it in terms of our different products. So, product A might be not very valuable. It's fairly easy to teach people in our business how to do, so we can scale it, but actually not that valuable. Whereas product B might be actually very valuable and also relatively easy to teach. Product C might not be. And we might have some services in there as well that we could maybe think about as well. So all the time, whether it's our customers or our markets, whether it's the products we produce or the services we produce, what we're looking to do is narrow that such that we're more specialist. We own a bit of the marketplace and we're more profitable. And also, let's be honest, the business will be more valuable if we're a specialist in an area. And another big advantage, it means that with that variability going down and the predictability going up, it means that you can train people up on particular things and free up your time. Step 3. We narrowed down in step 2. We've narrowed our focus to get more predictability, less variability. Step 3 is about protecting and serving your key business process. So what we know about successful businesses, particularly those that command a high multiplier and a high value, and particularly those that where the owner and the leader is able to take time out of the business and not work every hour God sends, is that the business is focused around a key business process. They've pinpointed a really crucial thing within the organization that enables them to compete and ultimately determines their business's success. Think about your business. It's based around a process, an edge, what you do better than someone else. If you cease to do that better than anyone else because you're growing too fast and there's less predictability, there's more variability, things are going wrong, then you ain't going to have that competitive advantage for much longer. So what I thought I'd share with you is your role. I think part of your role, as I said, I want you guys to do less doing, less of the doing bit and more of the designing and more of the delegating side of things. And the reason for that is because to increase your multiplier, increase the value of your business and increase the amount of time you can take out of the business or off, you need to focus in and make sure that this key business process is always will be your defining strength. So what do I mean by key business process? Give you a few examples. So if you take Apple, their core competency, the thing they do better than anybody else that's difficult for anybody to copy is they create new products based on seeing the world in a little differently, as they put it. So in layman's terms, cut out the BS, it's about their design and innovation, really. But what's the key business process activity that sort of sits behind that drives their design and innovation? And for them, it's their product design development process. If we look at Disney, what do they say their core competency is? What do they do better than anybody else? Family fun entertainment in the happiest place on earth. Oh, so in a normal sort of speak, what does that mean? It means they've got excellent customer service. And what's the key business process that sits behind that drives that? It's their staff recruitment and maybe their training process. Marriott Hotels, we enable you to receive quiet luxury delivered consistently. Okay. Why do customers buy? Well, it's just the greater quality they offer. And what's the key business process that sits behind that? The guest experience process. Aldi, we help you live a richer life for less. Yes, it's basically about we do things with lower costs, but maybe the process that sits behind that is sourcing suppliers, the low cost suppliers, finding and sourcing. World Wildlife Fund, core competence, maximize the benefit of members' contribution to save the planet. So there, we're talking about value for money. And the key business process for them that sits behind that is their project commissioning process, which projects they support and how they commission it. And then finally, Domino's. I think this might be out of date now for the UK, but it's still in place for certain countries around the world. They used to say, we'll deliver your pizza in 30 minutes or it's free. Why? What's that all about? That's just about faster delivery than their competitors. That's how they compete. And the key process that sits behind that is their driver scheduling process. So we can see for all these best practice companies, they've narrowed down why and how they compete into a particular area where they compete. And what they've also done is identified the process that's pivotal, that really sits behind that competitive edge. My point to you is that if Disney's customer service started to go poor overnight, because they weren't doing the necessary or the right sort of level of staff recruitment or training, then Disney would no longer be the high growth business that it is. The same with Aldi. If they're competing on lower costs, the process they must keep improving on is sourcing suppliers. And the same with Domino's. Faster delivery, is that what you're competing on? Then you've got to be always improving your driver scheduling process and getting better every year on year. So my point to you is the leader, the owner, the person who's running this business, I think needs to be spending more time protecting and serving that key business process, making it even better so that when it comes to valuing the business, it's going to get top dollar. What actually happens as businesses grow is that the role of the leader, the owner, etc., actually gets diluted across various areas. And what happens as they grow faster and faster, the key business process that's driving their competitiveness actually gets worse. And the value of the business then obviously gets worse as well. That key business process, what is it for your business? What is it for your business, do you think? So maybe just have a think about how are you competing at the moment in terms of your business? And then think about what your role is. So there'll be somebody in your organization that maybe works in that key business process at the moment. You might work in it sometimes, not always, but around the edges, you can see here, I've got some sort of functional roles that people play. And I guess, some people will be near the key business process, others will be further away. And maybe, unless the actual key business process really breaks down, they should focus on their functional role and not getting too involved. But if you take businesses like DHL, where they're really stuck for drivers, even people in the finance department have to get out of their office and sometimes start driving vehicles around, because delivering parcels on time is their defining strength. So people across the business all have to protect and serve the key business process in some ways sometimes. If your key business process at Marriott is the guest experience, then the owner and leader of Marriott needs to be really on top of that guest experience process. But likewise, if you're the receptionist at a Marriott hotel, you have your functional role to play being a receptionist. But if you've got a complaint, let's say, that might be affecting the whole customer service, then you jump in then and play your role in the key business process. So everybody's got different roles. And usually the time when people say, well, Steve, you don't realize how busy I am. I don't have time to do that. I've got my normal jobs to do and I've got to do them. What I would urge you to do is just think about how you spend your time and whether you can win back any of that time to protect and serve your key business process. So here's an example here. This is a gym owner whose core competence was to do with development of what they competed on, was the fact they developed and personalized one-to-one training and diet plans. That was their big competitive edge, and that was the process, key business process that sat behind it. So I got this particular manager to look at how he was spending his time. 10 hours on marketing campaigns, 2 hours on gym membership updates, developing a new system, training, purchasing, invoicing, photography. And I got talking to him and saying, half of this, more than half of this for me is not your role. You are, remember, not a workaholic entrepreneur anymore. You are a shareholder. That's what you are. If you're a shareholder, you get other people to do the doing, the vast majority of it, and you focus on what's important, which is the key business process. So I did a quick session with him to say, which of these sort of tasks that you spend your week doing, which can we trash? Which can we actually say, actually, we're just not going to do this anymore because it's not adding value? Which are we going to transfer to someone else in the business? Maybe outsource it, maybe get a student in, maybe get a part-time assistant in to do it, but you're not doing it because you're the shareholder. And which are we going to trim? You're going to do less of. And finally, which are you not going to touch? You are going to carry on doing. So you can see here, this was just a very quick little, I guess, illustrative example of how we can work with, or how you can work with yourself to actually monitor what sort of time you're spending. This is what we're thinking about. What I want to try and do is free you up to do the things you want to do in the business, or maybe outside the business. So here you can see we saved this particular leader 26 hours to refocus and protect and serve the key business process. He didn't have to do the internal training. He could transfer that to someone else. He thought he still had to do the purchasing of new equipment, but there's other people who could have done that in the business. Maybe he did a little bit less of that. Why he was doing when I asked him why you're doing the photography for the gym, he said, because I enjoy it. I said, well, that's fine, but is that really best of your time? Handling customer service queries. For me, there was other people that could do the vast majority of that, and only if it needed escalating did it need to come to him. And marketing, get a specialist in. He wasn't a specialist, so it wasn't even very good. So we could save 26 hours there to refocus and make our key business process, in this case, the development of personalized one-to-one training plans. We can get even better at that, more specialized, more predictable. I guess the fourth out of the 5 steps we're going to cover is really, I suppose, just another quick illustrative example of tracking everyone's time. I guess what we found is that people don't like doing this, but it always brings to light inefficiencies. And it also helps you and the people in the business to really think about how they spend their time. And we call it 4D timing. And the reason why we call it 4D timing is because the business, and let's talk about the business overall before we jump into your role. The business has 4 areas where it spends time. The first one is doing. So that's doing activities that adds value to customers and supporting activities. So this is the time operationalizing, doing stuff. And obviously, we need to have some time allocated to this because that's how you add value to your customers. Second one is deciding. This is about tasking others in the business to carry out activities. So this is about you or the business, let's say the business, giving tasks out to people. Go and do this. Can you try and do that for me? Can you do this today, this afternoon? Do this task now. How much time you spend on that. And also, because it's very task focused, the time you spend when they come back to you and say, okay, I've done that. What should I do next? So we've all had maybe new starters or graduates or interns or people like that. You task them with things, and actually it's almost as much time to tell them what to do and answer the question that comes back, or what to do next, or what if this happens. It takes as much time to do it as you might as well do it yourself, is the honest and the often thing that people say. So we've got time spent doing, time spent deciding, delegating. What I'm talking about here is delegation of outcomes. And I delegate outcomes, not tasks here. So I want you to have done 30 of these by Wednesday, or I want you to be able to do this at this particular cost. Delegating an outcome, not just a task. How much time do you spend doing that? And then finally, designing. So this is actually designing and improving the process. So looking at it from an improvement point of view, how to, I guess, pinpoint strategic decisions to fix, change, improve things. So what's actually interesting here, that as a business, these are sort of numbers that I'm working to, that as a business, the ideal is 80% doing for a business. So it's got to spend at least 80% of its time doing stuff, 2% deciding, 8% delegating, and 10% of its time continuously improving its processes. So think about your business. When we get busy, when we start growing really fast, what we find is that a number of businesses actually don't do it this way. What they do is they end up being, let's say, 95, 98% doing. So everybody, including the boss, is all doing the operations, which, sure, these things happen, I get it. But what that means is that no one's working on the business. No one's trying to improve it. And everybody's too busy to improve. And you can see we do exercises like this with our leaders and our businesses to get them to work out how much time in the past 30 days have they spent doing stuff. So you can see here, the whole business here in the top example, they reckon they spent 88% of the time doing, 10% deciding, and only 1% delegating and 1% designing. Whereas their boss, You know, he spent 60% of his time doing, 35% deciding, 2% delegating, 3% designing. So if the boss is doing 60% of his time or her time doing stuff, then who's going to bring the average right for the business overall in terms of improvement? Clearly, you've got to spend some time doing stuff. I totally get that. But if that's down by 20% or 30% for the business, then we're spending too much time blue sky thinking about things and not enough time doing. But it's interesting exercise to do. And then finally, final step 5 is design and delegate the tasks in the processes that sit behind your key business processes. What do I mean by this? What I mean by this is, if you want to get your life back, a life that's not just totally orientated by work and all the hours that you put in there, and you want the business to be sold at the right amount, then what you've got to do is delegate decisions down to the lowest level you can do. If you're always the one making the decisions, then people are always going to have to come back to you to get a decision. That takes time. It also stops you from what you were doing previously. So this is about designing and delegating. So if you think about the fastest growing business that I know, it's grown to 36,000 outlets across 119 countries, serves 75 units a second, takes 2 weeks from a brown site to operational, one outlet a day to be opened in China for the next few years. World largest toy distributor. Who could that be? Well, that business is McDonald's. And I think the reason why I say that is, interestingly, first of all, McDonald's is a franchise business. So the processes and the operating manual, how to do the job, is very well established. It's also very well trained. And to a certain extent, like a lot of franchise organizations, they can be seen to run like clockwork because it's so well operated and so systematized. Now, I'm not saying you should think necessarily about your business as a franchise growth strategy, but it's kind of interesting to think about, isn't it? I mean, if you could get your business to run and operate like a franchised business, whether that's McDonald's or whether it's any other franchise business, there's a way of doing it. There's a formula. It doesn't go wrong very often. But what's also interesting is the average turnover of a business unit is about 1.4 million, 8% profitability. At McDonald's, most of them are led by branch managers whose average age is about 24 years old, running a 1.4 million pound operation at 8% profitability. That sounds like to me something that's operating a bit like clockwork. Sounds like to me something that, to anybody interested in buying a business, they'd be interested in that. You know, on average, interestingly, on average, every £1 spent on under 18s salary generates about £170 of turnover. And on average, every £1 spent on over 25 salary at McDonald's generates £113 of turnover. So we've got relatively inexperienced people here running a business brilliantly, profitably, like clockwork. So how do they do that? Well, core competence, providing fast food at consistent quality and value. They've narrowed things down. You know, McDonald's have tried spaghetti, Mac spaghetti. They have tried pizzas. They have tried all sorts of other fast food, but they've narrowed it down to burgers because there's predictability. There's less variance. That's kind of what they do. Now, their franchise model makes owners act like managers anyway, but if you ask them what their key business process is, it's their efficient operational processes. And what I suppose I learned when I was looking at McDonald's is, you know, when you're thinking about growing your business and making your business run like clockwork, you often start to think, crikey, I'm going to have to recruit a real superstar, 100K guy or lady, £70,000 person, whatever it might be, you know, to get it to work like clockwork. what's interesting here is that if you have simple, logical, repeatable, recorded processes, then you don't necessarily need the genius person. You need a good person who can follow a process, like they do at McDonald's. So if you join McDonald's today, you'll get a lot of training on a particular narrowed down station within McDonald's, like the fryer station or the cheeseburger station or the burger station. And you'll be shown very clearly what you need to do and in what order. It will be very predictable how you do it. There will be no chance that you will cook a burger that's not cooked, that's not been cooked on the inside. It just doesn't happen. Very predictable, lots of training. And that's because I think what's interesting is they have managed to get a 16, 17, 18-year-old teenager that can't even look after their room to actually run a part of their McDonald's branch, run the fryer station, run the burger station, whatever it might be. But they've managed to do that through training and delegation. And they're really good at not just assigning a task to someone, go away and do that with these businesses, go and do this calculation, and then come back to me with all the questions. They assign responsibility. They make them accountable for the result or accountable for the outcome. So we need to make sure that we're not the ones on the fryer station that's causing a delay in the process for getting these fries done. Make them accountable for the result, accountable for the outcome. In some cases, I've seen this with people where teams are made accountable for the profitability of their team. So they're not just looking at what they do, they're actually looking at their costs and the profitability of that. In some cases, they're able to share in that. Now, this isn't something that happens overnight. It's not suddenly you get someone new and you assign them the task and they go straight to the accountability side of things. It's slow. It's progressive though. So this isn't a flick of a switch sort of, oh, we're just going to go from this sort of delegation to this sort of delegation. No, it's more like an accelerator. We slowly start to build the sort of delegation we do bit by bit, week by week, such that we get employees to act more like owners and take responsibility for their bit of the business. And again, just to sort of share with you, I suppose, this is an example of how places like McDonald's, I guess this is them designing rather than doing. This is the owner, the leader, if you like, spending time designing and delegating. So they'll be speaking to employees and saying to them, what's happening or not happening that's causing a problem in your particular part of the business at the moment? And they say, oh, well, you know, well, it's Bob or whatever. It's like, well, no. What's happening or not happening that's causing a problem? Let's not whinge about particular people or issues. What's happening or not happening that's causing a problem? And they get them to write that down. I say, what do you want to be happening instead? And then they get them to set a smart goal and say, okay, from what to what by when? What do we need to improve? Needs to go from creating so many of these from this to this by a date. And how might you go about that? What you might want to try. Okay, go and try that and then come back to me next week and let's see how we've done. And then once they've mastered that, the next goal, what's happening or not happening that's causing a problem? So your role here is more of a delegator, more of a help with designing. It's not doing it. You know, let's be honest. When people like, Jeff Bezos of Amazon, he's not there at the moment in Amazon warehouses, taping up parcels and putting stickers on address labels and taking orders, is he? He's not. He's got other people to do that, but he helps with some of the improvements. And he still helps on their core business process, which is selection of new countries or particular ranges. Final 1-2 minutes. Case study. What can happen when you focus your efforts on the multiplier? So this is a quick example here of a business we worked with in 2016 to 2018. And basically, this was an IT company. and they were involved with, they're basically in the housing sector, and they had a £1.3 million turnover, £300,000 net profit, which is 23%. And the estimated value of the business was 1.5 million. So they had a multiplier of five times 300K. And he wanted to exit the business, and he wanted to get that amount of money, 1.5 million. What we did was worked with him to do a diagnostic. We plugged him into the sort of ecosystem, and we set him up with a monthly mentor from our organization. We worked on him on the vision, what his growth story was over the next few years, and the business model. We helped him create a single page growth plan with what's and how's. We introduced him to a corporate finance advisor so he could get all the finances right, and a headhunter. One of the areas we wanted to improve most was the management team, and that needed a new financial director and a new HR person. So he worked with a headhunter to put that in place, and that was partway through 2017. He also worked, and he had some support from a consultant to work with his team on their core business process, improving that process and delegating things to the lowest level of decision making. We also talked about a wealth management advisor so they could get all the tax things ready for when they went to exit, and the due diligence on some of the people. The impact of that, in just under 2.5 years, their turnover increased from 1.3 million turnover to 4 million, and they were making 1.5 million net profit. So the net profit had gone up from 23% to 37%. In essence, they had a better business. They'd worked across a number of areas, but they just had a better business. But what's really interesting here is that better business attracted a lot of attention, and it was actually an investor, and they sold to a PE house. He sold for 50%, sold out 50% of his business. He was enjoying working in the business again. So he only sold bit 49% of it, or 50% of it. He kept the other 50%. The estimated value of the business was £22.5 million, a multiplier of 15 from a multiplier of 5. So he sold at 50% of that, so he got about £11 million and still had a job to do because he enjoyed it. And his plan is for eventually to exit completely, probably for another £11 million. And the reason for showing you that was just to sort of say, look, you know, if we are thinking about exit, if we are thinking about, you know, you slowing down, doing less, but the business doing more, and how do we drive that value in the business to make a better business, a more enjoyable business, more focused business, then these are some of the steps that you should be taking. So we covered an awful lot there, I know, in an hour. So what I would say is, if you've got any questions, I'll be happy to take them. I know we've gone a little bit over on time, in terms of 2 minutes over on time, so apologies for that. But if you have got any questions, be prepared to certainly ask them. I know if you fill out your paperwork, we will definitely be in a position whereby we can share the slide deck with you, if that would be of useful. I think it's been recorded as well. But if you've got any questions, fire them back to Lisa, and Lisa will get in touch with me, and I'll be able to answer them that way. Hopefully you've got at least one thing from today. Hopefully lots of things, but maybe one thing. Just narrow down the focus, and you know, what we want to do is you know, save you time in the business, because just being a workaholic isn't the way to sell your business, and isn't the way to add value. So Lisa, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Steve. Lots of information there. Yeah, if you do have any questions that you wanted to ask, you can just pop them to me. I'll put my email address on here now, or you can also add it to the hello sign 83 that comes. I think you can email me via that as well. I've put details of our next webinars up on the side there in the chat facility, so if you want them, you can find those on Eventbrite there. I'll just pop my email address. Do you know what my email address is? It's terrible, I know. Right. And also, Steve, I think some of you have been on Steve's previous ones this month, but if you haven't, he has done webinars on execution, the discipline of getting things done. and Vision in Orbit, how to create a one-page word picture of your 3-year vision. So if you found today useful and you think you might get some use from his other ones as well, the recordings are available to those. If you weren't on there and you would like to have the recordings, just email me there as well. And we can get the recordings over to you. You will have to fill in your AG3s for those as well, unfortunately. Right, I'm just going to pop my email address there so I can send any. Oh, I don't even know where I am. Where am I, Steve?
What?
James at winning.
Lisa.
Winning pitch.
James at winning. No.
See, I've got mum flu, so I'm struggling with everything today. So there we go. So any questions, queries you'd like me to get through to Steve, then just send it to that email address there. If you want the recording or the slides, then let me know and I can pop those to you as well. So thank you for giving up your time today. As you know, Steve likes to talk, so he doesn't leave you any time for questions at the end. His policy there, but he has got a fabulous team. That I would like to know how you rate your team out of 10, Steve.
Every time, 10 every time.
Okay, thanks everyone for giving up your time today. I look forward to seeing you on the next webinars coming up. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks. You.
Any questions, just give us a shout, guys. Thanks for your time. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.